Hi guys, welcome to part two of the lecture. I wanted to go over screenshots particularly because that's an area that I have more experience with, and Kimball and Hawkins go into it a little bit. They do a section about screenshots and mostly just explain that you don't want to overuse them for tasks. For example, every task in a software documentation help system would not use screenshots. That would be very time consuming. It's also a lot of space to take up. So I wanted to look at an example that I found online. You can see the topic that I have here is about working with navigation. There is a scroll bar to the right that you can't see. It's a little out of the view for the screenshot, but where there's only one word cut out, and then you can see that there's information at the bottom. So what this screenshot is doing, it's using callouts. Kimball and Hawkins talk about callouts as a way to explain with text what is happening in the image. Again, they say if you can just do the image without text, even better, but this is something that would require more information for the user. So we've got a screenshot up at the top here, and this has callouts with numbers, so you can look and see, okay, I have number 6, I want to know what that does. You can scroll down here and you can see 6 is the save button. You can get a little description. Now, one of the things to consider when you're looking at something like this is that a user can only see the screenshot on their screen. I'm on a normal size laptop, I think maybe between an 11 or a 13-inch monitor. I don't really remember when I ordered it, or screen rather, and it's small on my screen, so I have to scroll down to see the extra information. So if I'm looking for, well, what's the description of number 5? I head down here, detail windows. It's a pretty long description that I now have to remember. Or if I forget the number on my way down and I think, oh, was I looking at number 4 or was I looking at number 5? I have to scroll back up to the beginning. So there's little issues like that that you might want to consider. There's options like making the screenshot smaller, and by that I don't mean making it very small or cropping it. I mean selecting certain parts of the screen to show to the user and putting callouts maybe along the right hand side so they don't have to do all of the back and forth. Because again, that's very hard if you are on a computer. This would be worse on a mobile device. This is not meant to be consumed on mobile, so I think they're doing okay here. But you can see that, number 1, we go back up to the top, we find number 1. It's the Oracle logo. So they're talking about the Get Started, which you maybe wouldn't know because it just is an Oracle logo. That's actually a button that will take you to a different location. So we can also see that this topic, since it's called Working with Navigation, it's probably meant for a new user to this software in particularly, who is not familiar and needs help navigating the system at a very basic level. So they may not know what different drop-down menus are called. You can see number 2, this is some sort of a drop-down menu, and we get here and we can see that the software is actually referring that as a object selector. So rather than drop down menu or list, they're saying that's the object selector. So you would assume that you're going to be looking for that term in any task steps when you have to change something in that object selector. So that's something that a user is going to have to learn and know. Whether or not it's the best naming mechanism for it, you could argue that that's not specific enough, or that an object is too vague. It looks like we're giving a definition of what different objects are: workspaces, projects, portfolios. So that may give a reason why they're saying objects, but again, it's something that someone might in their head just say, okay, that's a drop down list. I can see that it's going to drop something out below it. I also want to talk a bit about proximity in this section, because proximity is going to really come into play when you're doing screenshots with numbers. Look at where the numbers are placed. The 1 is pretty close to touching the E in Oracle. So that's something that could maybe be given a little bit more space. I think you would still get the proximity that 1 goes with Oracle. and then 2 would still be with the drop-down menu. You could also argue that it should be on the right-hand side other than, or sorry, the left-hand side other than the right, but there's probably not enough space before this O to put the button there unless you want to block part of it. I'm guessing that's why they did not. Again, 2, we have that, the object selector. Now look at number 6. Now when we go down and look at number 6 in the bottom half, it gives me a definition of the save button. Now there's actually a cancel button first, so I would maybe refer to that as I would cancel save bar. Sometimes people will say that, save bar. I don't particularly like that term. It's not user friendly. So maybe just explaining what each button does, since cancel does come first, that might help. Those are honestly options that people are probably not going to read in the documentation because most people are familiar with the save functionality. So you may think, why would I describe cancel? It's right there. Why wouldn't they know that? But if someone has to read the definition of save, then I would argue that they would also need the cancel definition, and you should just include it in there. Again, that's somewhat of a personal opinion. Again, as long as you back it up with something based on facts or studies, I think that's a reasonable expectation. Now, if we look at number 7, to me, proximity-wise, I think that it's pointing to this little gear icon. So we go down and we see what number 7 is, and it says run reports, share, and full screen. Each of these items is bolded, so I'm going to assume each of those are different items. So when I scroll back up, there's only one icon here. So what they're actually referring to are these icons right above it. So the icons to the right of the save button. Now, that can be a little bit confusing for a user. If there weren't 3 items listed there, if there was only one, I would probably assume that it's this little button here. And then I realized that this button actually doesn't have a call out number, and I have no idea what that button is for. It looks to be like a gear. Maybe it's some sort of settings option. I don't really know because it's not listed. It seems like the 3 options for number 7 are icon 1, icon 2, and icon 3. And then if we read what they are, run reports, share, and full screen. If we go back up, that's most likely a full screen button because there's arrows pointing outward, I should say, on each of the sides, and that's something that would be more familiar with expanding or exploding. When we look at the one next to it, and that was the share icon, we can see an arrow pointing outwards. So you might say you're sharing it, you might say you're forwarding it to someone, you're sending it to someone, but either way, it's moving somewhere else. So that's another option that I would maybe say they did not do the best job on. You might want to define all of these across the row and give it some sort of a toolbar name. And I would definitely mention what this little icon is because looking at this screenshot, I don't know what it is. And so going over to number 4, we have some sort of a dialog box. So let's pop down. You see that it's called a page selector. Okay, and that would be, these would obviously be pages. That would make sense to me, and then a user can now identify that those are going to be pages. That's the way the system is set up. And one last thing I do want to mention is the order of the numbers. Orders of numbers for callouts are definitely something that are widely discussed. If this is meant to be consumed only by an English-speaking audience, which since it's an image, I would assume it's not translated, we can assume that the audience is going to read it left to right, top to bottom. So it looks like they went 1, 2, and then we actually jumped down here for 3. So we're going and taking a little bit of a step back and going back to the bottom corner. You could make an argument that this should be number 3. That would also be reasonable. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like they're trying to do left to right first before top to bottom, which is, it's an interesting approach. It's not right or wrong. Again, this is something that you might want to usability test with a couple of your peers. It could even be as simple as that. This person doesn't need to be subject matter experts. You can just have them look at the guide and even put blank spaces where the numbers are and see how they would number it themselves. Give them the chance and then evaluate how each person did it, see if they did it the same way. And if not, where are those indiscrepancies? My guess would be they're going to be right around here, around number 3 and around number 4. So these are all things that you want to be thinking about when you're going through the usability of the websites you're going to be evaluating. I hope this was a little bit more helpful for you, for those of you who are also especially interested in software documentation or any type of professional documentation that would be employing screenshots. It's definitely something that is interesting to look at. Some companies do not use a lot of screenshots because it's considered valuable time to spend creating those graphics. And if it's a program where the navigation changes a lot, you're going to be creating or recreating screenshots often. So, for example, if say the company did a rebranding and Oracle wants now just a capital O and the rest lowercase. That's something that you would have to fix each screenshot by either applying another layer to the screenshot or just redoing it entirely. And again, that's something that's going to be up to the writer or UX person that's going to be taking the screenshots. In a lot of cases, it's going to be the documentation writer, but you also might have someone that does more of the graphic work. But I wanted to give you some insight into this just in case that's something that comes up for you in your career. It won't be brand new, and it's definitely worth thinking about the order in which you do call outs and how you could usability test that as well. So this is going to end the lectures for week 7. Make sure that you are working on your usability projects. Make sure that you're reaching out to your group members. I want to make sure that everyone's participating equally in the groups. So I will be following up with participants and making sure that that's happening. If you have any questions along the way, please contact me, email, discussion board. I think my Drexel email is finally getting back up. So now that the course is coming to an end, you guys can use my Drexel email. Feel free to reach to me at email or phone, anything that you need. And also for the graduate students, make sure that you're continually working on the annotated bibliography project because you have that on top of the other work that you're already doing. All right, can't wait to see your projects, and we'll talk again next week. Bye, guys.